For a long time, I thought there was something wrong with me. I was quiet, I kept to myself, and I didn't feel the urge to constantly talk or perform around people. And growing up, that alone seemed to make people uncomfortable. Somewhere along the way, being introverted started to get treated like a flaw instead of a personality trait. Like if you weren't loud, outgoing, or constantly social, then you were automatically seen as weird, boring, or a loser. And that misunderstanding is exactly why introverts catch so much unnecessary hate. A big part of the problem is that most people don't understand how introverts actually experience the world. Social interaction isn't effortless for everybody. For some people, talking drains energy instead of creating it. Being around noise, constant conversation, and crowded spaces can feel exhausting rather than exciting. So when an introvert chooses silence or alone time, it isn't because they're rude or uninterested. It's because they're recharging. But from the outside, especially more extroverted people, that need for quiet gets misinterpreted as coldness or detachment. This misunderstanding usually starts early. Growing up, being social is treated like a skill everybody is supposed to master immediately. If you're not talkative in class or not eager to socialize, you get labeled very quickly. Quiet kids are seen as shy, awkward, or behind somehow, even though a lot of them are just wired differently. Instead of being encouraged to develop at their own pace, introverts are often made to feel like they need to be fixed. And that idea sticks with you well into adulthood. As you get older, that pressure really doesn't go away. It just changes shape. Adult life is built around being visible, vocal, and available. Networking, group hangouts, office culture, social media, it all rewards people who can talk easily and often. So when an introvert pulls back, chooses smaller circles, or prefers their own space, it clashes with what society expects. And instead of questioning the expectations, people assume the introvert is the problem. This is where things really start to break down. For a lot of people, especially extroverts, silence feels uncomfortable. It feels like rejection or judgment. So when an introvert isn't talking or reacting, it creates anxiety. People start projecting meaning onto the silence. Are they bored? Do they not like me? Am I being ignored? But for introverts, silence isn't seen as a negative space that needs to be filled. It's where they feel most at ease. It's a calm, peaceful feeling, and it doesn't come with pressure to perform. That difference alone can make others feel exposed or uneasy. And instead of sitting with that discomfort, they label the introvert as rude or cold, when in reality, the introvert is just being themselves. Another reason introverts get written off is because they're often mistaken for being boring. In a culture that equates value with visibility, people who aren't loud or constantly entertaining often get overlooked. If you're not the life of the party, talking nonstop and telling stories, some assume there's nothing going on beneath the surface. But most introverts are anything but empty. They're usually deeply invested in specific interests, ideas, or creative outlets. They just don't feel the need to broadcast them to everybody in the room. Once you actually get to know an introvert, that boring label falls apart pretty quickly. A lot of introverts thrive in smaller, more meaningful conversations, which is why most introverts you meet will hate the idea of small talk, because there's no real value in small talk. You are just making conversation for the hell of it, and to most introverts, they would rather sit in silence than engage in meaningless conversation. They're not trying to impress a group. They're trying to connect with a person. That's why they often prefer one-on-one interactions or tight-knit friend groups over large social circles. It's not about being antisocial. It's about depth over volume. And for people who are used to constant stimulation and surface-level interaction, that quieter, slower way of connecting can feel unfamiliar or even uncomfortable to some people. Being an introvert doesn't mean you hate people or want to avoid life. It just means you move at your own pace. A lot of introverts enjoy spending time at home, focusing on personal projects or hobbies, and just relaxing. And here's the thing, that downtime isn't laziness, it's restoration. It's how they recharge and prepare to engage with the world on their terms. Extroverts, who get energy from constant social interaction, can struggle to understand this, which is why introverts sometimes feel unfairly judged for simply enjoying their own company. Another misconception is that introverts are often anti-fun or don't know how to have a good time. In reality, they just enjoy different kinds of experiences. Instead of loud parties or constant group outings, introverts often prefer activities that let them focus and think deeply, whether that be playing video games, reading, working on a project, or even just chilling with one close friend. Introverts often see value in mental stimulation a lot more than others, which is why they keep to themselves for the most part. It doesn't mean their lives are dull. It just means their energy works differently. And that difference can be misread as boring by people who just don't understand it. Another thing about introverts is they also tend to avoid unnecessary drama. When you're naturally quiet and selective about who you spend your energy on, you skip a lot of conflict and chaos that comes with larger social interactions. That calm, low drama approach can actually make life easier, but to some extroverts, it comes off as distant or even judgmental. They see someone who isn't constantly reacting or gossiping and assume the worst, when in reality, introverts are just protecting their peace and what matters most to them. There's also a misconception that introverts can't change, like they're permanently stuck in their quiet bubble. And that's just not true. I know because I've experienced it myself. Growing up, I was shy, socially anxious, and constantly overthinking every interaction. But over time, I pushed myself out of that shell. Talking to strangers at work, meeting new people, putting myself in uncomfortable situations. And slowly, I learned that most people aren't judging you as harshly as your mind thinks. And that confidence comes from experience, not from suddenly becoming extroverted. But even now, I'd say I'm still sitting somewhere in between introverted and extroverted. I can socialize, I can be outgoing, but I still need my quiet time. And that's the balance a lot of introverts are searching for. We can enjoy people and experiences without burning ourselves out. The problem is that society often expects you to be switched on all the time. And when an introvert steps back, it's seen as a flaw instead of a natural part of how we operate. Learning to respect that balance, both in ourselves and others, can go a long way. Being an introvert also comes with hidden strengths that most people overlook. Because we spend more time observing, reflecting, and focusing deeply on a few things at a time, we develop skills like critical thinking, problem solving, and creativity. Those quiet hours alone, playing video games, reading, or just thinking, aren't wasted. They shape the way we interact with the world and the way we create. And yet, people often judge introverts for not being outwardly productive in social ways, missing all the work that's happening behind the scenes. At the end of the day, being introverted isn't a flaw. It's just a different way of experiencing the world. Introverts aren't antisocial, boring, or cold. They just value depth over quantity and meaningful connections over shallow interactions. The problem is that society often judges people by the wrong standard, assuming that if you're quiet or reserved, there must be something wrong with you. That couldn't be farther from the truth. The key is understanding and perspective. If you're an extrovert, it helps to remember that introverts' silence isn't a personal attack. It's their way of recharging, processing, or simply enjoying the moment. And if you're introverted, it's okay to embrace your nature without forcing yourself into a mold that doesn't fit. Quiet doesn't mean weak, and reflective does not mean boring. Choosing your energy wisely is one of the most powerful tools you can have. So the next time you meet an introvert, try to see beyond the silence. Appreciate their perspective, their calmness, and the way they engage with the world differently. Extroverts especially should try to understand their point of view and give them space to open up on their own terms. It might take patience, but if you can get them to share their world, you'll discover a depth, thoughtfulness, and creativity that most people never see at first glance. Introverts don't open up easily, but once they do, there's an entire world beneath the surface that you never knew existed, and it's worth the effort to find it. But I want to hear from you guys. What would you classify yourself as? Introvert, extrovert, or somewhere in between? How has your experience shaped the way you interact with others, and what's one thing you wish people understood about your personality? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I read every single one of them, and I'd love to get a conversation going about how we all experience the world differently. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.